23, 2024 budget workshop number two of two. We had 6 or 7 department heads present last Thursday afternoon, and this Thursday afternoon we will be having another 6 or 7, and we will be starting with Dolly McGuire, the town clerk.
Yes, we will start with Town Clerk tonight. That'll be followed by Information Technology, the Sewer Department, Webster Public Library, Community Development and Engineering, Highway Department, and Justice Court. So, but Dolly will kick us off with Town Clerk.
Okay, so the tax collection budget, in regards to personnel, there's no change in staffing. It is comprised of 2 part-time clerks and 1 full-time tax clerk. The next item, computer equipment. This year, I'm requesting replacement of 1 computer without a monitor at a cost of $1,200, and the difference of $1,050 is for software licensing. Printing and postage, of the $24,000 budgeted for printing and postage, $12,000 is estimated for reimbursement from the Webster Central School District, which will be posted and realized as a revenue when received. Department expenses are tax collection office supplies and legal notices, and again, like postage and printing, I'm estimating 50% of those costs to be reimbursed by the school district. The estimated revenue of $180,000 is based on historical collection of town and county interest and school interest. It's very difficult to predict the amount from year to year. In regards to the town clerk portion of the budget, again, there's no change in staffing. It is comprised of 1 full-time deputy town clerk, full-time license fees clerk, and a part-time receptionist. For computer equipment, I'm requesting replacement of 2 computers without monitors at a cost of $2,400, and the difference of $1,590 is for software licensing. Printing and advertising includes legal notices and the cost to update the town code. Postage, in the last year, we have seen the U.S. Postal Service increase their rates at least 2 times, if not 3. I made no increase to office supplies for 2024. The same for records management, no increase. The machine and computer contracts line item includes general code Laserfish software, the town clerk software for fees and licensing, copiers, and the postage meter. The slight increase you see is due to the addition of the dog license renewal online module and replacement of the postage meter that comes with a new lease agreement. Subscriptions and publications is the annual fee for the general code E-code that is found on the town's website, which is where you will find the town code and the town minutes. Conference and transportation will be used for my attendance at the annual New York State Town Clerks Conference, the annual New York State Tax Receivers Conference, and travel to Monroe County Town Clerk meetings, which are held every 2 to 3 months. Sales for Easy Passes have decreased, so I've reduced this line item. And background checks for peddler's license is a new line item. Our procedure for peddler licenses requires the applicant to provide us with a background check from the town where they reside, and in addition, we send the application to the Webster Police Department for a background check as well. This past year, we had a situation where we had to throw out the net a little further, so to speak. So we engage the services of Metro Data, and now feel it's necessary to continue with this service for each applicant. Revenue, town clerk fees are comprised of New York State DEC hunting license, fishing licenses, marriage licenses, and miscellaneous fees. Bad check fees are return check fees. We charge $20 for checks that are returned for insufficient funds. Again, sales for Easy Pass have decreased, so I have reduced this revenue. Dog control fees are dog seizure fees charged to the dog owner when animal control picks up their lost dog. Webster Central School District tax collection reimbursement. This is where the reimbursement we receive from the school district will be posted. Towing permits, no change in the amount of revenue and a slight change to games of chance. I increased dog license revenues with Animal Control Officer Barbara Holland's help. We have been able to increase the number of dogs being licensed. Peddler's license, this revenue line item is actually town clerk licenses, which is comprised of peddler's licenses of $2,050 and waste hauler refuse licenses at $3,440. And the last item, town clerk permits, consist of special event permits of $2,100 and one mobile home park permit of $300. Are there any questions?
No, thank you for the explanations along with it. It's very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Dolly.
No, thanks, Dolly.
thank you, Dolly.
Next up, we have, get bigger. I don't know how to make it bigger. Steve, how do I make the screen bigger? I don't see the,
That works for. Scroll back to where you were.
what's this?
No, we broke it.
No, this goes.
Oh. There we go. All right, so,
I think it's here.
there we go.
There's no screen adjustment.
Now we did it. Did it again.
It's gonna have to stay small.
Yeah, I know, and then I get to say it's about the size of it. It's gonna, there you go. Control, scroll mouse. How's that?
Okay.
I'll make it bigger.
We'll try to hold it there.
The
All right.
timing of your presentation is impeccable here.
This timing's perfect.
Yeah.
Steve Peace,
All right,
Info Technology.
first three lines are, of course, compensation for employment. As you can see, we have our help desk employee. He's actually working out very well. We've actually probably got more work done in the last 8 months than we probably were able to do in the last 3 years, just because he's on staff with us. So thank you for him, and thank you for letting us have him, and he's working out great for us. The big budget line, basically, which is capital purchases. You can see that's a little bit of an increase. We have some equipment that's dated that needs to be replaced. Actually, that cost should have been more, but due to the fact that a lot of the departments are moving things to the cloud, they're moving things out of our data center and having them posted in other places, we were actually able to reduce some of that increase. We have 3 servers that need to be replaced. We're actually only going to budget to replace 2 of them because we feel that we don't need a third one. Also, there's other things in there that need to be purchased that really don't want to get into because they're kind of security related, but we're looking at trying to improve our security posture behind our firewall. So some of those services that we're looking to try to implement are part of that increase as well. Since the last meeting, the trend that I saw with all departments was that they all are using more technology to make the departments more efficient, less staff, things like that. Well, because of that, it kind of requires a little more infrastructure on the IT department side to be able to provide them those services. Training and seminars, there's an increase in that just because of the help desk employee. So right now we only have our training that we use is only a 2-person license because we never had 3 before, so now we have 3, so we've increased that slightly. Office supplies is pretty flat. Smartphones is actually a decrease since we switched over to FirstNet AT&T. The IT department is now no longer part of a family plan, so now our actual cell phone bill is less. Technical support, there's a decrease there. Director expenses is flat. Website design and maintenance, that's primarily for domain name registration. And then our cell tower rent and wireless cost is slightly up. That's rent we pay to have antennas on the cell towers at the town hall, highway department, and sewer plant that provides us a secondary wide area connection for all the other facilities that connect back into the town hall, so that way we don't have, hopefully, knock on wood, downtime if anything happens with the primary connections. Actually, I think sewer uses the radio links actually for the primary because it's faster. But that's pretty much for the IT department. If anybody's got any questions? Yeah, you guys are good?
Thank you.
I'm good.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Steve. Next up, we have Art Patron
Control scroll, will make it bigger and smaller.
from the Sewer Department.
I've just got a few more lines than IT,
Yeah, Art has many lines.
many lines.
Let me get to it.
All right,
All
start
right.
at collection. Collection, all right, so summer help, we're decreasing that. We're going to go down to one summer staff, so we want to decrease that line item. Highway project labor, actually, you know what, would you be a favor and grab the, yes, thank you, sir. No, yeah, that's neat as a ruler. Too many lines.
Comes in handy.
Yes, definitely comes in handy. So, highway project labor, we reduced that line by half. We've got obviously some construction going on, and hopefully we'll limit the amount of labor we need from highway. Compensation employees collection system, we did reduce that as well by $88,506. We did not backfill a position, and I think we're doing okay for right now. Computer equipment and licensing, working with Steve, we're able to clean up some of that, those estimates. Capital purchases, so this definitely jumped a little bit. We have a dump truck in there for $97,580. The current dump truck is 1994, 29 years old. As we've learned in the last probably 4 years, the transmission parts for that are obsolete. Last time it was in for repair. They actually had to make parts for it and use old parts. So the size of the dump truck will actually decrease. We will put a plow on it, and a little bit easier for everyone to drive and a little more functional. We've borrowed the Park and Rec dump truck. It'll be a little bit bigger than that, but that seems to be working out very well for us. So we get to save some costs there in the end. An EnviroSight manhole camera, it's $22,000. As Steve had mentioned, we're trying to, do more with less. And right now, to really televise mains and so forth, which we need to flush on a regular basis, it's 2 people with our mainline camera. This device actually allows one person to go out, open up the manhole, drop a camera down. You can see out 400 to 500 feet and really see the condition of it. So we're just not blindly flushing mains if they don't need it. So it's really an efficiency thing as well. And then remote pump station monitoring. Right now, all of our stations, we have no remote monitoring. We only see what's going on when we're there every day, or if we get an alarm. By installing some of this technology, we'll be able to see it somewhat real time on our computers and see where the stations are doing, how they're acting, and we may be able to not get to every station every day. Some of the smaller stations we wouldn't need to see. So still testing this actually as we speak. So vehicle operating lease expenses, like so much other equipment in our department, vehicles have been just let go, and so we've been able to purchase some new vehicles and get everything somewhat up to date. We're going to jump down to our repair systems, and it's tree work at pump stations. Again, like everywhere in town, there's ash trees and so forth, and we need to keep the stations safe from any falling trees. Wet well cleaning, see that jumped 71%. So that is primarily due to the project coming up. There will be digesters that need to be cleaned. There'll be primary tanks that need to be cleaned. There'll be aeration tanks that need to be cleaned. By handling this cost in-house, we are actually, otherwise we'd have to pay prevailing wage and so forth, and contractor overhead. So we chose to do this through our operating budget. So, alarm system maintenance has jumped 36%. That is primarily due to the phone lines and the Centrex fees and so forth. That is just driving all phone costs up. And we can jump down to sewage treatment and disposal. The part-time employee that line has jumped, and that is, excuse me, Denise Jones and Ken Dickinson, who retired. They're coming both back part-time, and really, you know, the time they've been there in 2023 has been invaluable, just for their historical knowledge. So it's well worth it having them there. Compensation employees. So as we look towards, and we have towards succession planning and retirements, and the very difficult time we have finding operators due to the fact that there's very few of them out there, we've put in for an operator trainee and an assistant plant chief operator. The timing of this is very deliberate, as they will be on board for the construction. They can understand what's being installed, how it's going to operate, and this should set up the town for many years to come. Capital purchases. There's secondary sludge dewatering pump. This is needed to help us when we take our secondary tanks down to get to the bottom of those and pump them out. Again, the trash pump, this is for the thicker stuff down at the bottom. And then overhead cranes. Our overhead cranes are obsolete. We've replaced them at Clem Road Pump Station. And again, like we've done with some of the pump station control panels, this is just a very methodical way to go through and get them updated. Sodium hypochlorite, that was obviously 104% increase. The price for this was $2.13 a gallon in 2021. In 2022, it went to $3.08, and we've got it locked in at bid for $2.89. That is just welcome to the new world. Telephone, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Again, these are the Centrex charges on the phone lines. They went from $3.99 to $15.99 per line. Steve tried to help us out with that, and it sort of, I hate to say it is what it is. Yeah, so. We're going to jump down to lab supplies and fees. During construction, we'll be sending out some of the samples for testing that we normally do in-house in our certified lab. Buildings and ground maintenance. This is just a continuation of getting organized and keeping track of the equipment that we have. Pallet racking, scrap metal dumpster. Currently, our scrap metal is strewn around everywhere, put in piles. It's not a very clean or safe work environment. And then tree work around the facility. Miscellaneous shop parts, we decreased a little bit. The guys have been doing great on keeping everything going, and obviously we have some new equipment coming in, so we were able to decrease that. Calibration and repair. This is just, again, it's a service, and the cost has increased. You can see, let me jump up one above it, conferences and schools, and I want to touch on that one. So this is really a credit to our Chief Plant Operator, Rick Keneally. He's so involved at the state level and regional levels. He attends these conferences. He actually writes papers for them and speaks at them. He is also able to integrate into our operators that the importance of going to these conferences and, being involved in meeting with their peers to the point that Dwayne was the Operator of the Year in this region, and Tim Keegan received a scholarship. So kudos to Rick. We'll jump down to 40420. And that is oils and greases. Again, just a commodity that has just increased dramatically over the last couple of years. So, as well as electricity. Employee benefits, Paul, do you want to speak to anything in there?
Yeah, the employee benefits are generally based on history. I did find that there were some what we might want to call a pseudo contingency built into the hospitalization. So I was able to take that back a bit. Plus, the blue collar union contract agreed to high deductible health insurance, so there's some savings there. So you actually see a decrease in health insurance. Then you have the various revenues. The sewer department bills commercial customers based on the residential rate. They're charged 1 unit for every 60,000 gallons of water they're used. So it actually ties into the Monroe County Pure Waters data. So that is there. Septic waste and leachate, I have a 0, and that's going to remain at 0 until we get the project.
That's correct.
Along
Yeah,
with, right?
the plant is unable to take any outside waste. Aeration basins just cannot handle it.
So we might see a little there in 2025, but
Possibly if equipment.
possibly toward the end of 25.
Correct, if the equipment shows up.
Yeah.
And I would mention, it's not a huge jump, but TV sewer inspections, I think the town as a whole has done a better job of really collecting these fees from the developers. So I think that's just a big team effort between engineering, finance, and all of us trying to make sure those are collected.
Yep. We made progress in that department.
We absolutely have.
I'll go on to capital side of things. As you know, the sewer rate is made up of 2 components, operation and maintenance, which is the collection and the treatment of the wastewater. Then we have the capital side of the rate, which it's charged to residents that may not be hooked up to the sewer system, but they have a sewer line in front of their house or accessible, which they could connect to. So those individuals would be charged just the capital rate. If you are connected, you'd be charged both rates, the O&M and the capital charge.
So I would, Paul, like to touch on capital improvements collections.
Yep.
So that's up 36, almost 37%. So a lot of what's in that line is our problem lateral repair. So when I started here, going on almost 6 years, we had a list of, almost 40 problem laterals. And what that entails is a belly, a dip, or some other issue in the residence lateral, which has to be resolved by the town because it's town-owned pipe at that point. We have, again, methodically gone through and repaired 3 and 4 a year. We're now, and it started actually this year, we've done the easy ones first. We're now to the point that, we're crossing roads, we're going deeper. There is a ton of utilities in the area, so it's getting a little bit more expensive. But the upside to all of this is we would normally, everybody on that list, we send the flush truck out 4 times a year to make sure they have no problems. So it's 2 people, the flush truck. It's an expensive venture, and if we can clean them up, the residents are happy and allows us to go on and do other things. Back to you, isn't it, Paul?
Any comment on the building items? I'm not sure. maybe not. As far as the debt service goes, the serial bonds are fairly consistent year to year, but we're going to actually borrow, I think, around $31 million toward the end of August of this year. We expect to break ground on the wastewater treatment plant Phase 2 project very soon. So for 2024, I budgeted interest only on the BAN. BAN is a bond anticipation note, which is a one-year short-term borrowing in anticipation of eventually issuing a serial bond. So the first year you can pay interest only. So for 2024, we budgeted interest only based on that 31 million. Actually, 33,500,000. And I used an interest rate of 4.25%, which I think will be higher than what we're actually going to end up with. So I should be able to take this number back a bit. So we'll see how that goes. Then you just have the various revenue items for the capital side, which are similar to O&M. So it's just based on the capital charge rate, which is charged to per unit for commercial, which once again is 60,000 gallons of water usage. Then there's entrance fees, which are charged to any new entries into the system. So if you choose to connect to the system, there's an entrance fee you have to pay to the town. And then this one down here, the Monroe County debt reimbursement, that goes back many years. Actually, it's going to mature in 2024, but I believe it had to do with the sewer system down in the sandbar.
Correct.
And it was a joint project with the county, and they actually reimbursed us for most of the cost. So that shows as a revenue. And that's about it. We have Coca-Cola Fairlife on here, industrial use charge, but there's nothing budgeted in 23 or 24. That it should kick in for the first time toward the end of 25. That's the most of it. Questions, comments?
Concerns?
I don't want to jump the gun. Patty, Ginny?
I have one comment and one question, and overall in the budget, it's a very small amount, but first of all, I want to commend both you and Rick on the investment in our employees when we talk about conferences and training. I think that has paid off, and we've really got some stellar employees who have great knowledge down in your department, and that's because of our investment in them, and I want to thank you for that. The other was a question on the telephone of going up to $15 and something a line. Is that because we have a telephone in every pump station?
So we do have a telephone line in every pump station. That is our tied to alarm service.
Right.
And we are testing, like I said, call it a cloud-based.
Yes.
Right. And so that is actually, and it's similar to what Steve and I and our team is talking about with our SCADA, which controls our plant as well. But that's exactly it. We're looking at, will it work, does it work well, and, what the cost, pros and cons of it.
So in the future, we may be able to look at reducing that by doing it more of a cloud-based and remote types of setting.
Yes, that is our hope, and reduce the
Okay.
call-outs, honestly. Because if we can see these alarms
Right.
on our phones or on our iPad, it may not be something that we need to go into, or a staff member doesn't need to come in the middle of the night. We can just, make the change right there and deal with it in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, if you could, I see you're down, when you got to the bottom of the list there, it shows how the capital EDU charges $113 in this
Right.
proposed budget, is that correct? 113.16. You go back up, what was the O&M?
$200.97.
I'm sorry, what was that? 200.97, okay. So based on these,
About 314.
it's 314 in total. And to give some perspective on that, this year we're at 232.
Correct.
I don't want to oversimplify this, but this is the realities of now paying the interest on building the plant, but we don't get the benefit of the revenues and cost savings until it's done in 25 and 26. Is that oversimplifying it?
That is correct.
Okay.
We have to,
Does that make sense, Jimmy? Yeah. Now, the only other question I guess I have is that, obviously, since we're still, and it's been talked about a lot in this boardroom lately, when you went over the line item that right now there's no industrial use for Coca-Cola Fairlife, is it possible in 2024 that because of how they have agreed to essentially pay for the upsizing of the plant and for the conveyance pipes, and probably through an industrial use, in '24 they're not going to have any variable charge because they would have to have flow. So there is no, whatever that would be per 1,000 gallons, because there will be no flow. But is it possible that we could be getting some of the fixed revenue from them in '24 from that agreement?
it is possible.
Now, when that happens, it doesn't change the fact that on the January tax bill, assuming no changes happen on this, that people got charged $314 on their tax bill for
Right.
O&M and capital, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if it happened late after the budget's adopted, it would end up falling to surplus in 2024, which means it could then be appropriated back out of fund balance to help us in '25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, I guess.
Supervisor, you had mentioned about, really, the plant needs to be, much further along before we be able to see any revenue generation. So, all along, we've been planning on it. We know, obviously, revenue to that department in the town is huge. So we've been working with our design and engineering teams to really try to coordinate as best as possible to build those structures that would bring us revenue quicker, being a septage or leachate or things like that. The hurdle we're running into is a lead time on equipment, year and two out. But it is very, we're very conscious of that, and our whole team is, so we're trying to drive that as best we can.
And,
And we used to accept leachate and septage.
Right.
We had a receiving station, but.
That's correct.
But the equipment is just so outdated and so non-functional in many ways that we've not been able to accept revenue for quite a while. So it just, further bolsters the argument for doing certainly the asset renewal and then the additional technology to be able to do even more with that we're receiving.
You're absolutely correct.
I do have one other question, comment, whatever. It really kind of is the same, I think, genre as if in the next 6 months, whatever, as costs become known on the upsizing of the plant and the conveyance pipe and we ink the deal, or if you want to call it, or the industrial use agreement, or however that the attorneys put that together. And if there is flat fee to the town from Coca-Cola Fairlife in 2024. You explained how that's not going to change the $314 of O&M and capital that was on the tax bill, but it would go to balance, fund balance. And
Right.
I'm going to guess it's the same answer to this, that, knock on wood, we've got $35 million in grant applications that are out there now, between WQIP, water quality, whatever that is, for $10 million, ESD, Empire State Development, for $5 million, and the WIA grant, which is, if people recognize that, That's because our Phase One project for $12 million got the maximum at that time, WIA grant of 25%. We got a $3 million grant back in 18, 19, whatever. So we're applying for $20 million on WIA. By December of this year, long after the budget is adopted, if we got awarded the WIA grant, based on how the WIA grant pays, reimburses, would we be getting any of that money in '24 to offset some of these bans that we're taking out, Paul?
We would, because they generally advance you a good-sized portion, and it would dramatically reduce the amount that we would have to borrow in that second borrowing, which would occur probably in August of 2024.
Yeah.
So you'd see savings
Right,
in '25.
okay. God, I hope that those two questions didn't just confuse the living heck out of people, but it
confusing.
basically is, hey, look, if this is the budget we go with, and obviously this is early August, but on your tax bill, if you're a town resident, you would have a $314 aggregate between your O&M and your capital. Doesn't matter what your house is assessed for, that's more of a
That's
flat fee.
per parcel.
The things that could happen in '24, like Coca-Cola paying a flat fee on that industrial use and getting certain grants that come in that we get the money that we can use fiscally intelligent to maybe pay off and minimize interest that is in this budget.
Right.
The taxpayers aren't gonna really see that benefit on their tax bill until really what we do in '25.
Right.
But it would affect '25 on the positive note if
It would
those two things
be
happen.
very helpful in '25.
Okay. All right. That's all I got.
Okay,
That's all he's got.
Thanks.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Art.
thank you.
All right, next up, we have Adam Traub from the Webster Public Library.
Afternoon.
Adam?
Alrighty. Thank you for pulling up the page, Paul. So up at the top, we've got the vast majority of our budget, which is salaries. Salaries and wage changes do not follow the town's agreements. They are a flat 2% COLA and a 1% step for anybody who's eligible for a step. So that's what's reflected in the first two lines, both my salary and the salary of the personnel. Hourly personnel, on the other hand, is jumping significantly. Part of that was savings I was able to realize last year due to a vacancy. We are filling that vacancy this year. On top of that, minimum wage going to $15, plus compression adjustments for staff at the lower end of the hourly scale. To put it in perspective, there are 63 people who work at the Webster Public Library right now, and 57 of them are part-time. So there's a chunk of folks who are getting minimum wage or compression adjustments that would go beyond just a simple 2% COLA. Moving down, we've got, I'm going to go down to the conference line. Deputy Supervisor Cataldi, I thank you for your comments about investing in our staff. I am asking that we restore pre-COVID level funding. That's $500 per full-time librarian, excluding myself, to be able to allow librarians to continue bettering themselves. You may have heard that one of our librarians, Jenny Paxson, won the Rochester Regional Library Council's Public Library All-Star of the Year this year. And so I'm trying to continue to help the librarians grow. This is just the previous amount that was budgeted for before COVID. So it's $500 flat per librarian. Again, not including myself, as we can raise private funds to send me to anything I need to go to. Moving down, we've got the telephone. I'm actually increasing this a little bit per the actual in 2022. I would really hope, working with Steve, I might even be able to reduce this over the next year, but that's dependent on a couple of unknowns at this point. So I'm budgeting a small increase there. Moving down, I'm expecting a significant decrease in the usage of our credit card. Fewer transactions due to fewer fines means fewer fees that we owe the credit card companies. Our budget and for the rent itself, and again, thanks to Paul for separating out the two line items that are a significant portion of our budget. The rent is flat this year. I'm expecting about a 4% increase in the common area charges and taxes. Looking into historical data, there seem to be some cyclical elements. A good example might be striping the parking lot, for example. While we're not responsible for that, it does come back to us in the form of common area charges. Going down to rentals, repairs, and building services contracts, these are due to increases. I'm going to sound a lot like Art here. Service providers are demanding increases, and we are in an aging building. You all may have heard that a sprinkler pipe failed in the space next to the library last week and resulted in flooding. So we continue to work with what we've got and trying to keep things running. So that's what the majority of this is rentals, repair for equipment, and building service contracts. Automation, this is actually our membership to the Monroe County Library System. This has been flat for 3 years. The system works really hard to not try to pass on increased costs to members. So it's been flat for 3 years. They're asking for a 1.5% increase this year. As a reminder, they provide our cataloging system, the trucks that deliver our books, our internet, a steep discount on that internet. So it's a completely fair request after 3 years of flat fees. Subscriptions, this is really just a new line item that we teased out to try and highlight the purchases of books are very different from the purchases of things like magazines. Magazines are subscriptions. They work differently, and so we kind of teased that out from other areas to try and highlight the cost of continuing resources. Library materials, much like last year, I'm asking for a $10,000 increase. It's kind of that slow, steady increase I hope to get us up to our peer libraries, the other large libraries in Monroe County. The target there is around $200,000 in this year's dollars. So obviously in 8 more years we'll be there, and we'll try to adjust that as we get there. Sorry?
But inflation, you'll still be 50,000 behind.
I will be behind, that's right. But it's not a race, or it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right?
That's right.
Library databases, this again, much like the subscriptions, these are our online resources. The biggest change here is we added a software to allow for better scheduling. All of our scheduling was being done on paper. This allows not only supervisors to be able to reconcile more quickly, but also allows staff to swap shifts, for example, when they have other commitments. Cleaning supplies, the cost is going up, and we are anticipating that as well. Office supplies, costs are not going up here quite so much as the increase in purchase of library materials requires that we increase the amount of the protection, basically, of our things, of our materials. So books get Mylar covers, for example. As we increase our purchases of books, both with the increase awarded by the town as well as private money that's been increasing, we need a little bit more to be able to cover all those books. So that's the increase there. Natural gas, I'm sincerely hoping for a decrease here. We, through a donation from the Webster Library Foundation, we were able to install new thermostats and new sensors, which hopefully gives us a better and more efficient operation of our HVAC. We've seen a decrease in the usage of both natural gas and electric since the installation of some of these more efficient technologies. Which brings me to the next line, which is electric. I am estimating that we will actually come in under 68,000, and the reason being is that As I put this budget together earlier this year, I've been tracking the impact of the LED lightings that we've installed. So far this year, from January to June in 2022, we used about 216,000 kilowatts, which ran us about $35,000, January to June. 2023 so far, we've only used 159,000 kilowatts per hour, and it's cost us about $22,500. If you take that decrease proportionally for the entire year and then adjust for the 16% increase that RG&E is proposing, we're looking at about an expenditure of $55,000. So I'm hoping that this continues, and I should note that thanks to the commitment from Assemblyman Mengtelo, we've got another $20,000 coming in to replace LED lighting later this year, on top of the $5,000 or $6,000 that we were able to get through rebates from those installations. So I'm sincerely hoping that despite the price increase, we can reduce our usage. And the water comes through the county as normal, so we're seeing just expecting a small increase there. Paul, did you want to say anything about the employee benefits?
Yeah, once again, employee benefits are based on history. We found that the hospitalization or medical insurance line was budgeted a bit high, so we've been able to bring that back. So overall, we're down 20,000 year to year, which is a good thing.
Back to me?
Yep.
Back to me.
On to, yeah.
All right, we'll
On to
move on to revenue. All right. At the May 10th board meeting for the Webster Public Library, the board very proudly voted to eliminate all book fines. This is a continuation of that JNYA fine elimination that we did last year. So I zeroed out that line, expecting no book fine revenue coming in next year. Moving down, we've got printing. Last year when I presented to you all, I said the new printer and printer arrangement that we had would likely be better, but I wasn't sure what to estimate. We're on track to make about $7,000 this year in 2023. So I'm expecting that we'll see significant revenue there from the printing charges. Hold book fees is the next line. This one was a bit of an unknown. The system that supports us and provides the trucks that drive the books from library to library was expecting a significant increase in state aid. That did not come through. However, they did receive additional support from the county, a significant increase. And the MCLS Directors Council, those are all the directors of the libraries in Monroe County, are having discussions about what they would vote for. Ultimately, it comes down to the library board or library system board of trustees to make that decision. But since that's kind of an unknown, and it's also possible that we could eliminate fees, I'm budgeting $0. I don't know that it will actually be zero, but we could see those fees removed over the next year. Library card replacement fees, we're seeing an increase in cost. That's money in, money out, essentially. So, as far as the bottom line, it should be read as zero, basically. Billings for lost books, increase in cost of lost books means increase of replacement costs. So we're seeing a little bit increase of revenue there. Our interest and earnings, as we slowly rebuild the library fund balance, as well as get better interest rates on our investments, we're expecting that. And thank you, Paul, for your assistance in estimating that. That's right. Yeah, we'll take it.
It's a good and a bad thing.
Yep. Unclassified revenue, this is various revenues throughout the year. We're expecting a small increase there. And our state aid sadly remains flat this year. And I think that brings me to the end of my comments.
Yeah. Yeah, so overall, we're looking at a transfer from general fund of $2,448,000. So it's up about $150,000 year to year.
And about 125 of that is in salaries.
Correct.
About 86% or so, which.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Any questions, comments?
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ginny.
No?
No, thank you.
No?
Yeah, thanks.
So, I don't know if it's a question or comment. Let's talk or both. Adam, first of all, is this your second budget season?
That's right.
Because you've been about a year and a half on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing a very good job, by the way.
Thanks, Tom.
At the beginning, you were talking about how the payroll schematic for the library doesn't follow the town's structure. It's New York State education law and whatever, something along those lines. And that's why, Paul, you said at the end of that presentation that it would be a transfer of just a lump sum of 2.4 million or whatever over from the general fund to the library, and then the individual line items you guys manage at the library between you, Adam, and your library board,
That's right.
okay? Unlike all these other line items that the department heads are going over, if they get approved in the budget, those are appropriation line items. Now, those are locked in, and would need budget transfers or amendments for us to change that for any of the other departments. The library also doesn't follow formally the town's recently adopted fund balance policy. But what I really like, Adam, that you see the validity of that fund balance policy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you're trying to follow that.
Yep,
And I don't know
that's
if,
right.
I don't know if you've had discussions with the library board and they're like, yeah, I think that's a good idea for us, especially in light of the fact, and I don't think I'm breaking any confidentiality, you'd like to see that balance grow, because someday, what is it now, 9 years, 2 months, 16 days?
8 years and change, let's call it
Is
that.
it 8 years and change?
He's a little under 9
Adam
years.
has the clock in his head of when the lease runs out in the library. So there's thoughts that maybe there'll be a new library building built or a building purchased and an ownership in the future for the library by the town instead of the renting it. And I happen to think that from what I've seen, that probably is a good idea. But last year, we appropriated $37,000 of the library fund balance to the 2023 budget. And essentially what that did is it lowered how much we had to transfer over from the general fund by $37,000. Is that correct, Paul?
That's correct.
But this year's budget, we have no appropriated fund balance coming over
There's
from the
none-
library?
None at this point, no.
Okay. All right. And so the $37,000 from last year, we're 6 months into the year. I mean, sooner, someday we'll have the actual results of 2023. And it may end up that your actual expenses and all that stuff and revenues, you didn't need that $37,000 this year.
Yeah, there's a good chance that, so by appropriating the 37,000, we're basically saying we think the library fund will lose $37,000 for 2023. So in other words, your expenses will be higher than the revenues. That doesn't always happen. If some of the expense accounts run less than what you're originally budgeting, you end up gaining some surplus. And if I was to guess, I'd probably say they probably will gain a bit, even though we budgeted to lose 37
Okay.
by the end of the year.
Uh,
I mean, Adam would have a better handle on that, but.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I have been very budget conscious and with, again, not telling any secrets. I think I've been pretty transparent about this. I would like to see the fund balance
Yep.
reach that town policy, whether, and certainly our board could adopt an official policy. I've been using that as my guidelines. In many ways, I try to, follow the town wherever possible. And so I would like to see that fund balance raised, especially in anticipation of
Sure.
if something catastrophic happened, like that flood, we were able to get out with no damage due to fast-acting staff, which was really phenomenal, but we could be in a different situation here, so.
And just to be clear, the fund balance policy basically states that we would like to see fund balance fall between 15% and 50% of the annual actual expenditures.
Like the library,
Right.
is it safe to use 2.4 million as the
Right.
annual?
So the minimum would be 15% of that, which would be, 350,000 or so.
360,000 and the max, like.
The
$1.2
max would be
million.
like $1.2 million.
Yeah. All right, I hope that didn't feel like a deposition, Adam, I just.
Not at all, it's a fair question,
Okay.
yeah.
That's all I got,
Thank you.
All right.
thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Adam. All right, next up, we have Josh Artuzo. He's going to talk about community development and I think engineering. Going to jump back to general fund. Okay. I think we start with building maintenance.
Okay. Yeah, and if the board doesn't mind, I'd like to just go through both engineering and community development in the order in which the budget is laid out. Just-
Great.
That'd
Okay.
probably be simpler. Thank you.
Okay, so the first item is highway labor. We've kept that flat year over year. Essentially, from time to time, we have the highway department perform some improvements to the town hall campus. I believe last year they did some paving work, striping, constructed a sidewalk to one of the entrances of the buildings. So we've kept some money in there for continued improvements around the town hall campus. Capital improvements, we've slightly decreased this a little bit from last year. The engineering department had put together a 5-year capital plan based on expected repairs or improvements or replacements to the building and/or equipment. We kind of separated that from this budget line, but we may need to incorporate some additional funds at some point based on further review of that capital plan.
That's correct.
The next one is general maintenance, so that these are for repairs to equipment that pop up unexpectedly. Most recently, we had one of our pumps fail in the courthouse, which caused some flooding, and that was a costly repair. So we've slightly reduced that amount by 5,000, but we are keeping what we believe to be a healthy amount just to cover unexpected expenses. Public Works general improvements, we have not historically used this budget line in the past 2 to 3 years, so we've eliminated it for next year. The town building cleaning service is also a reduction from last year. When we were preparing for the 2023 budget, we were considering switching cleaning service providers, and we were anticipating having to pay a higher cost for doing so. Our existing cleaning company has since been bought out and merged with another company, so the service level has improved. So we're going to remain under contract at the agreed-upon price with our existing service provider, which results in a savings year over year. Refuse service, we've kept that flat based on historical costs. This next line, the telephone service, you'll notice that it's a substantial increase. And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what's driving that. Paul, do you happen to know what that telephone service expense represents?
I think potentially we might be a little high on this line. I don't know if, Steve, you have any comments on it, but are you expecting it really to be this high, or?
Be that high as far as I know. We worked really hard to try to make sure that our cost was
Yeah,
close to what it was before we switched providers.
we might be able to adjust this line back. The other half of it's in the B fund too, so that one would be high too.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were consolidating services all under this budget for the whole town, or what was actually driving that, but I don't believe it will actually be.
Cost per user went up, but we did reduce our number of users to try to even that out.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll take a closer look at that number.
Sounds good.
Internet service, slight reduction there from last year. Again, this is based off of historical billing and what we've incurred to date. Same thing with natural gas and electric. The gas costs have decreased slightly, and the electric has been increased slightly. And those numbers, again, were based on what our historical bills have been for the
Yeah.
town hall campus.
Please sign history. All right, so now we're gonna jump to fire marshal. Any comments there?
We've kept the overtime roughly the same. That's to cover off-hour call-outs, weeknights and weekends, if there's an event that requires a response by the fire marshal. Generally, they don't work overtime in regular business hours. That's just to cover off-hour call-outs. The fire marshal and deputy fire marshal salary is governed by the collective bargaining agreements that were recently approved. Computer equipment and licensing, we've slightly reduced that amount from last year. These are associated with swapping out equipment and any specialized licensing for the software that is used by the fire marshal. Vehicle operating lease expense is slightly been reduced from last year. We just did swap out the deputy fire marshal vehicle, and we were scheduled to swap out the fire marshal's vehicle in 2024. However, we're going to hold off on doing that for a year. The fire marshal's vehicle is still relatively in good condition and not that old, so we're going to stick with that until 2025. Again, cellular telephones, I'm not quite sure why they're doubling. Okay. Okay.
Costs
So,
are up.
Training and seminars, we've kept flat. There is training each year that both the fire marshal and deputy fire marshal attend for their continuing education credits. We've reduced the supply line item as well as the auto maintenance. Again, we shouldn't be spending quite as much on auto maintenance now that we've swapped out one of our older vehicles for a new one. But we have reflected a slight increase in the fuel costs just based on the trends with fuel costs.
The revenue for fire inspection fees is a fairly new fee that's being charged, like 2023. Maybe it was toward the end of '22, we began charging these fees. So now we'll jump to the B fund, which is the general part-town fund for the areas outside of the village of Webster.
Okay, so I'll start up at the top, actually, with the part-time employees. So from what I could tell, this line in 2023 was solely for our summer interns.
That's right.
But essentially, we're where you're seeing a slight increase based on our restructuring from what was originally proposed in the 2023 budget. We had originally budgeted for a full-time construction inspector, and then a certain individual, retired individual that had the perfect experience for that type of role had just recently retired from another municipality. So we were able to bring him on board as a part-timer, seasonal. And what we found in the 6 months or so since that has occurred, it appears to be covered by a part-time employee. And I'll get a little more into detail on the implications of that a little bit further down in the budget. But what you're looking at on that line is for a part-time construction inspector in the engineering department. We've kept overtime relatively flat. The salaries, again, were governed by the recent agreements that were put in place for non-union employees. The full-time employees, you'll see there's a slight decrease. However, we are proposing to add a new junior planner position, but it does not result in any additional full-time employees than what was approved in the 2023 budget. So essentially what I described earlier about the construction inspector that was originally budgeted as full-time, we are taking the part-time that is left of that position and using it towards this new junior planner or zoning analyst position. And the purpose of that position is really to help improve customer service and shorten the response times for the high volume of inquiries that we do get about land use questions, real estate transactions, developers, attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. So that person would help assist with the permit counter coverage, as I mentioned, answering the high volume of emails and phone calls, inquiries into our department, as well as assist me with some of the board work. And they would also obviously be involved in the multi-year effort that we're about to embark upon with the comprehensive plan update and the subsequent zoning code revisions. Other than that, our full-time employee overall number remains the same. Computer equipment and licensing, we've reduced that slightly from last year. I believe we've stopped some of we've actually been able to achieve a savings by closing out some older accounts that are no longer in use on some of the software that we have licensing fees on. We've also significantly reduced the equipment and furnishings line. In 2023, we had budgeted a little bit more than typical, just in anticipation of having some additional staff members. We needed to buy cubicles, desks. We've upgraded some of the filing cabinets throughout the office. So we've pretty much tackled all of our main goals when it comes to the office furnishings. So we're reducing that by quite a bit for 2024. Capital purchase, safety and field equipment for our inspectors, that remains flat. Same as office supplies, we've kept that flat as well. The town hall cleaning, again, much like I mentioned earlier, we are staying with our current service provider, which results in a net savings from what we had originally anticipated for this current year. Now, the cellular telephones in this line have decreased from last year, which is interesting, because the trend was they.
The bills kind of got rearranged from these switch providers. They more of a family plan.
Okay.
The numbers kind of get skewed across the board. There's supposed to be overall cost savings.
Steve, you're explaining a whole lot of this, and I'm not sure it's getting picked up for those who are watching.
Yeah, so what Steve was basically saying was that we were previously on a family plan, and now the phone bills have been broken up in a different way than what has previously been done. So while it looks as though it may be increasing for some, it represents an overall cost savings for the town.
Thank you.
The next line is for our software support, our IPS permitting system. I'm proposing a slight increase in that because I'd like to explore getting some additional modules for both workflow and operational efficiencies. We're trying to expand its use into other departments so that we have a central database that everyone is working off of for information sharing. So we'd like to explore what additional features our current software has. Vehicle, I'm going to skip down to vehicle repair expense. We've lowered that due to acquiring pretty much all new vehicles through the lease program. So we don't expect to have much of any expense associated with vehicle repairs. Conference expenses, we kept that the same. Unfortunately, Mary and I did not make it to this year's floodplain conference like we had originally hoped, but we would like to keep some money in there next year for the ability to attend professional conferences. Internet service has been reduced slightly based on current billing. Fuel expenses under Public Works, we've kept flat. Same for maintenance of equipment. That's for our large-scale plotter that we use to print out large plans and posters and other things. Computer supplies and maintenance contracts. So there is a slight increase there. We're going to be swapping out some of the older machines in our office, and I believe that that also covers some of the annual licensing agreements for software that we utilize. Engineering and survey services, we've reduced that slightly, but occasionally we do need to tap into a surveyor to get us a survey map of a property or verify, that something was built in the correct location. So we do have some money available for that if needed. Uniforms we've kept flat. Engineering GIS professional services, that is performed by the MRB group, and that is for extra tech support when we have issues with our internal GIS software. And then again, the utility costs are based on historic averages and expenses. So in terms of inspection and engineering fee revenue, we have kept that flat year over year. I think that's based upon what we've been averaging in terms of bringing in engineering fees. Okay, so now we'll move along to the building department. So the first line there, part-time employee, it's showing as a 0 in 2023. So essentially, our full-time building clerk, who has been at the town in a variety of roles for many, many years, decided to retire. And she was gracious enough to come back on a part-time basis, 30 hours a week. So that is what is reflected in this budget. We feel that because she is so knowledgeable and has established relationships, she's able to perform the duties in a 30-hour work week. However, when she ultimately decides to really retire for good, we may need to revisit that line. So the other part-time aspect that we're using for the proposed junior planner is coming from the gain of this part-time position. We've kept overtime for the building department flat. Again, the salaries and the compensation of employees. The compensation of employees was that building clerk that I spoke of earlier, which is why it's showing as a 0 for 2024. So computer equipment and licensing, these are specific to the building staff's computer and licensing. Again, we're going to be swapping out older machines with newer ones. Professional services, we've kept flat. That's in the event that we need to utilize a third party to serve papers of some kind to a property owner. Town code compliance, I'm proposing to double this line from the current year. This is the line that we have been utilizing to address problem properties that are unkept and creating nuisances. So what the town does is we procure a third party to go secure the facility or take care of the issue, and then we invoice that owner. And if they don't pay, it ultimately becomes a lien on the tax bill. So we'd like to start utilizing that a little bit more. So I'm proposing an increase to that line. Office supplies stayed the same. Cell phones, again, are showing a substantial increase, but again, that's because the way that the plans have been divvied out is different than how it's historically been done. We have the vehicle operating lease expense, which remains the same. We did replace all of our vehicles within this department last year, so we're not acquiring any additional new ones. Dues and conferences, we've also slightly reduced based on historical expenses for that. Fuel expenses, we've kept the same, and uniforms, we've increased in anticipation of additional apparel that's needed for new staff. So the building permit revenue, we have kept it relatively flat. However, I do expect it to come in above that, given the Fairlife project. They're likely to be applying for their building permits sometime in early 2024, and we will probably be collecting a healthy sum of money for that one alone. So I'll just go through the Zoning Board of Appeals really quickly. The compensation for the board members, you'll see a slight increase from this current year. That is because we have added 2 zoning board of appeals alternates positions. So in the event that regular board members have a conflict or are unable to attend the meeting, we can tap into two individuals, on short notice and still be able to proceed with a full board. We are compensating them just like we would for the regular board members, kind of more of an incentive to have them be continually engaged so that they can be called upon whenever necessary. The recording secretary, the salary is split 50% in zoning board and 50% in planning board. There's obviously, we have an attorney for each of those boards. We do keep the office and mileage reimbursement flat year over year. And we have also kept the signage relatively flat. Those are the property under review signs that go out to all of the properties that are seeking approvals from the various boards.
Then, once again, employee benefits are based on history. Look like the budgeted line for medical insurance was higher than what it needed to be in 2023, so we actually brought it back. Once again, our employees are now required to be on high deductible health insurance, so that helps too. And actually, this general part-time town fund benefits from the sales tax money that we received from Monroe County. So there's a large revenue item, $780,000, which we're showing for '24, which helps offset a good amount of the costs within the fund.
Yeah, so
So the plan right now is to show zero taxes to be raised for general part-town. That actually enables us to use the sales tax money in the town-wide funds as well, which helps us in the general fund. That's all we got.
Yeah, Ginny, any questions?
No.
Patty?
No?
I think a couple of questions here, Josh and Paul. You had said, Josh, when you were going over the building department revenues, you kept it flat year over year, but if everything goes as planned, Coca-Cola Fairlife would be applying for their building permit, and you said that should be a pretty good substantial chunk of money. How does our building permit fee work? Is it based on the size of the property? Is it based on how does it work?
So it's a per square foot charge.
Okay,
So I believe for commercial industrial, it's somewhere around 25 cents a square foot.
okay. And so they're planning on building a 750,000 square foot facility?
Correct.
Okay. So that alone, I guess, would be 180 grand?
It would definitely be in the six figures, yes.
Okay. And then what was was it a planning board fee, where I see planning board fees of 6,000 for 2024? What was the fee that Coke Fairlife just submitted when they submitted their plans? Is that,
Yeah, I don't think that's reflected in here. I believe the fee that they submitted was a little over $30,000 for that.
yeah, it wouldn't be reflected because the 2023 budget for that line item was $7,500. And when we did the budget a year ago for 2023, we wouldn't have had on our radar screen a $30,000
Wasn't
fee.
even a twinkle in our eye.
Wasn't a twinkle in our eye there, Patty. And last but not least, along this line, do you notice a common theme here of Coca-Cola Fairlife? The revenue on the building, well, I don't know, where would the revenue, is it the inspection and engineering fees that we're keeping flat at $40,000, is that engineer estimates and letters of credit in the 3.5% fees?
Yes, I believe that is what that line is.
Okay. So somewhere in the next couple of months, if Coca-Cola Fairlife makes its way through the planning board, zoning board, all that, which we'll see, it certainly looks like they will, I mean, but, you know, then they would have to, in anticipation of applying for a building permit, they'd have to do an engineer's estimate, and that engineer's estimate is submitted to our town department head and the engineering department. And I know Pat Stevens, you've been helping on that lately, because so much of it is tied to, are what they're saying for grading and infrastructure, the estimated cost, is it commensurate with what the cost of that is in 2023? And because of your background, that's been very helpful. I can't even imagine what the engineer's estimate for site work on grading and pipes and all that will be on that project. So there's some things coming up, and I'm glad that we're being conservative and not budgeting for them. But it is, you know, it's off the charts of anything that we've ever
is.
experienced. So, yeah, that's really, I think, all I got.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Josh, you were doing
Thanks,
double
Josh.
and triple duty there, thanks.
Yeah.
No problem.
All right, next up, we have Pat Stevens from the Highway Department. I guess we'll start with general fund, right, Pat?
General fund, yeah, I'm gonna use the same sheet.
850-10, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Hit the highlights.
I will try my best to hit the highlights. This one's kind of a big one, and I'm gonna be in here a lot tonight, so it's a busy night. Yeah, so we'll start right into it. The first couple of lines there are salaries. As Josh mentioned, those are based on recent blue and white collar as well as non-union agreements that have been passed by the board that give a progression from year to year based on cost of living and a lot of factors. So those are up slightly. Just as a quick, big overview of this section, everything in general is just going up slightly. It's sort of tracking with the times, which is what the history shows us, that year by year these do tick up ever so slightly, so we want to keep up with it so we don't create a windfall. Yeah, we go down through computer equipment licensing, purchase equipment, you know, that's office style equipment, printers, ink, all that type of stuff. Capital improvements to the building, as we're going to discuss later. Hopefully we're on our way to getting a new building. This number has crept up and up and up over the years. We're trying to really minimize it at this point, which we started last year. So this was significantly higher in 2022. 23 we brought it down. For 24 we're going to keep it right around the same area, but we're really trying not to put any more expense into that building than we have to. So office equipment, again, another printers, radios, things of that nature. Refuse service is tracking pretty flat. Security monitoring, we haven't got any major projects there. Gasoline pump maintenance is been coming in on track, so slight increase for labor. Training, this has been increased in the last couple of years significantly. We are using a lot of it. We'll have to look year to year. We're trying to do as much training as possible, but we don't anticipate a large jump, so just a little bit more there. Cleaning, that's a townwide contract currently, but it should, as Josh said, they're going to stay with the current provider, so it should track pretty even. Slight increase in general improvements at the facility. Programmer training, slash training, some of our computer stuff, computer programs we use for payroll, things of that nature. Highway building cleaning supplies, we do have a lot of our own paper towels, soap, stuff like that that we keep on hand. Answering service that handles emergency calls after hours, notifies our on-call foreman, hasn't shown a large increase. And then we get into the utilities. Natural gas, I believe last year we tracked quite quite a bit under, so we made a small adjustment there to come down and travel with what we saw the previous year. And then water, a slight uptick with a lot of the washing we do. So then we hop right into street lighting signals. This section has a couple of things that increased that were actually a little bit outside of our control. Road sign labor, we anticipate to be the same, similar year to year. The striping section, we actually outsource a portion of our town road striping to the county, and those numbers have gone up significantly, I think due to labor cost and material cost for those items. So we had to increase this one by about 10,000 in order to make up with the bills we've started to see from them. Lighting district, we don't expect to change. And then intersection, we didn't see any anomalies this year where that's changing, so that just went up a little bit in case.
We have off-road drainage. Any here a bit, drainage off-road.
Yeah, so off-road
Just
drainage
slight
again,
increase.
yep, just some slight increases with labor and materials, but nothing significant.
All right, we'll jump to the highway townwide fund,
Sure.
which is where we purchase most of our equipment.
Yep, so this is the big section. This is the one that we work on pretty hard. It's got some labor in here to start for the townwide. Again, those numbers are tracked with our contracts, union negotiated contracts. There's increases, cost of living, things of that nature. So those are solidified in those realms. Labored hazard material, not anticipating anything coming up big. Small equipment, trimmers, drills, things of that nature, haven't jumped up drastically. Safety, same thing. Purchase of equipment. So this is the very, very large line. This is the line that is trying to reduce a line just south of here. And we haven't really started to make up a lot of ground on that, which means, based on my approach, we need to continue to invest in this line. This year it is down ever so slightly. The reason that is that the pieces of equipment that we buy to put in our fleet, the price is now so large that when you eliminate one, you create a large shift in either direction. So this one is usually never going to track within a small amount of one another, because the increments we're purchasing in are six figures, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 for our plow trucks that we use now. So that particular line this year is going to be trucks. Our fleet of 24 full-size dump trucks with plows and equipment still yield the highest maintenance. And some of them are still older than I would prefer, which increase that equipment repair and maintenance line. So we're going to try to keep those newer, get those into a cycle that's shorter than it is now. We still have some trucks that are tipping on 20 years old. We really want to get that down as much as we can. Once that starts to happen, then the equipment maintenance line should go down, and we would just need to maintain from there. But we're still playing a little bit of catch up.
It's still experiencing long lead times.
Very long.
Correct.
Yeah, they actually have gone
Have
up
to plan way
somehow.
ahead.
Yeah. I think demand has gone up slightly for some reason, which has pushed them out. So last year when I bought the plow trucks, it was 18 months. Right now they're tracking 2 years. So we've actually got into a system now where we sign an intent form that isn't binding us to the actual purchase. It's a spot in line. I've already signed that for our 2025 trucks, just to keep the lead time at 2 years.
Good.
Yeah, so we would potentially be able to receive those trucks in 2025 by signing an intent that we believe, as long as budget's passed and everything, that we are going to purchase them in 2023. So it's a cumbersome,
Yeah.
tricky process, but we're starting to get a handle on it. Vehicle operating lease, so that is the same number of Foreman's trucks. We now utilize the enterprise lease program, to which we consolidated all our vehicles into the trucks that we have, that you can put the large plows on and tow and all that, have just gone up drastically in the last 5 years. So that's the same amount of trucks, but just an increase in MSRP. Tools, supplies, we're able to tailor that to not have it increase significantly. Equipment and maintenance repairs, that's the line I'm talking about. So the $450,000 last year was closer than we prefer, so we bumped it up a little bit still. The goal in continuing to have a very, very healthy equipment budget is that eventually that will start to go down. As I said, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but we're definitely heading in the right direction with that large sum for equipment purchases. And I really hope in the next few years here, that $400,000 number can be dramatically reduced. So that's the line I was speaking about earlier. The next couple, not really much for changes, pretty much in the same lines. This section here, so we get into snow and ice program, which hasn't fluctuated greatly in the past few
Revenue
years.
side of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so these are revenues. These are state, county, DOT as far as snow and ice revenues. We still do work with the county for some of the maintenance, primarily on the roads in town, but any of the county roads. We're seeing those things tracking along. We don't have a big uptick. When you get down into the equipment rental Monroe County projects, we decided to make a significant change. This year, we were close to budget. In years past, we've really blown those out of the water. And I'm anticipating the potential for us to need to be in town more. We've opted to do some self-performance on the new highway garage. We have a lot of capital projects coming up. I've seen in the past, if the county project number is too high, we have to commit to a bit more than I wanted to, so we shifted that down. We do hope to exceed that projection and maybe have it similar to this year, but I don't want to be obligated to do that if we do have to do more work here, whether it's at our facility or on our roads in town. So we put that projection lower. Again, the revenue projection being low, we hope to exceed it, but that way we don't have a deficit if we don't need to be there.
That's
Equipment, yeah. Equipment sale, we have started to see that a lot of the pieces of equipment we have, which is a great thing, are very well maintained and they're of high value in trade. And what happens in this section is we have to put the full value of the purchase. And typically, if we send it to auction, we get the full value of the sell for the piece of equipment we're replacing. We're not often adding equipment, we're replacing pieces of equipment. But when you do it as a trade, it doesn't net as a revenue coming in. It just
Right.
reduces that sale price on the front end. And we found in the last few years, our value for our pieces of equipment is very good. But if I do it as a trade, it creates a budgetary issue because it doesn't show the revenue coming in. There's no clean way to do that. So we've reduced that way down, anticipating when we, say, buy a new truck or a new loader, we might trade that piece in toward the new one, and just the purchase price would be lower, netting the same savings as selling it, but not coming in on the same budget line. Then state aid is similar in this section, repayments, again, snow and ice. And those adjustments in revenue to bring the revenues down, it causes, a significant fluctuation in this section, and then looks like there's a transfer in there too, right, Paul?
Yeah, we budgeted $500,000 to transfer from the Highway Part-Town Fund to the Highway Townwide Fund because the Part-Town Fund does the work on the roads, the permanent improvements, using the equipment that's owned by the Townwide Fund. So it's a way to compensate the Townwide Fund for the use of the equipment. We've done that for the past 3 or 4 years.
That's incredibly helpful and important to
Yeah.
the concepts I'm talking about with equipment, that I think will really get us to a better place
Yeah.
long term.
It's worked out well.
Yeah.
And the serial bond is just a piece of equipment. I think it was just one truck that we purchased, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, and we actually bonded for it. Employee benefits fairly consistent year to year, actually down a little bit due to the conversion to high deductible health insurance. So now we'll go to highway part-time,
Yep,
where
so.
the road work occurs.
Yep, yeah, like our capital projects and stuff are in here. Starts out with the labor portion of that, which is a big healthy part that we spend on our roads. Fuel, slight uptick, it's leveled out slightly. The labor, again, tracking with the contracts, cost of living, things of that nature. Fuel and materials continue to go up. Materials have not gone up as much this year as they have in years past, luckily, but we do want to track some increases. It fluctuates with the market. Asphalt's the biggest one. It kind of goes up with asphalt index, so we have to be prepared for that to go up. And then the permanent improvements road, the capital projects, this year we're out on Shadowwood. We're actually scheduled to mill that next week. We've got all brand-new gutters already installed. It'll get milled off and then be paved, and that will be the section of capital improvement for this year. We're moving along in that neighborhood into next year. Larkston, and roads over in there just off of Holt. This is that section. Again, this is where those material costs have really gone up significantly. The bottom, the CHIPS program in here, I think we had a CHIPS line, was it before this already? We haven't gotten to it yet. It's a shift.
I was going to ask you about it.
Yeah, it's
Actually,
a specific
okay.
shift. So CHIPS funds can be spent on equipment that does this stuff, and it can be spent on materials. Last year, we purchased a large piece of, this year, sorry, no, last year. The 2023 budget, we have about $150,000, $130,000 that's going toward a piece of equipment. That's a different line. So when we use the CHIPS funds for that, it's over there. So you'll see there's another line, and I have it marked in my thing, but it's in here, that is the reciprocal of this. So since this one changed by that amount, the other one changes. It's because we want to start, the same amount of CHIPS funds.
Right.
This year, we spent about 130, 150 on a piece of equipment. Next year, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna spend it all on roadway materials, which tends to be our chip seal program. That program has increased in cost significantly, but we feel so strongly that that program is one of our most important programs as far as maintenance of the road, that we shifted it to materials.
Yeah.
So this is just a shift. It's not a up or down, it's what we spend the CHIPS funding that we get on.
So the revenues will show up in a different place as well?
Correct.
That's- Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to understand, but that's the gist of it, is that.
Makes perfect sense now.
Well,
Thank you.
it does, but it's nice to see it side by side, and that's just not the way the funds are set up. So those are the big changes there with that line. Yeah, we didn't lose anything, we just are gonna spend it on something different. This section, overtime wages, painting and animal pickup, that stuff remains pretty consistent. Paint supplies, we saw that we weren't utilizing that as much as in the past, so we reduced it down to use it other places, so results in a small decrease there. Leaf pickup are probably our most labor-intensive activity that we do, showing no signs of slowing down. We want to continue to be able to do that, so we've got some increases there on all aspects. The machines to do it are a very high-maintenance item because they get a lot of wear and tear, so keep making sure we stay ahead of the curve on that. Snow removal, we're into, again, highly labor intensive. This past winter, not so much, but this past winter was very deceiving in the sense that we were out there quite a lot, but a lot of times it was salting. It was making sure that the stuff that was coming down wasn't turning to ice when the traffic went over it, things of that nature. So we didn't have a lot of accumulation. We had large banks, but we did spend a lot of time out there on the roads. So that's why that line is so large, and again, this expense does tie to some of those revenue lines from state and county also, because we maintain their roads for snow and ice in the winter. Yeah, so down through there, but we don't anticipate a significant change. So this one, even if you have a year where it seems like the expense is down, you really can't capitalize on that because the next winter can be completely different. So you have to really keep these somewhat in line year over year. So that's the snow removal, desalting. I mean, salt continues to go up. The cost of salt is going up and up and up, so we made those adjustments accordingly. Weed and brush, not a lot of changes there. County road compensation. So the county is coming out with some revised information on this stuff. They realize they're behind the times with some of the reimbursement things they do, and one of those is this. So you're gonna see those numbers go up slightly, which is, I believe these are the expense ones, so they're going up because some of the revenues are going up as well. We don't know exactly how much, so we haven't, we've been conservative still in what we put in here, but they are increasing their compensation, which is good overall. And we're back into benefits.
Employee benefits actually down year to year. And once again, it's the medical insurance line. So I was actually able to reduce it between retiree and current employees, reduced it by about 110,000 overall. So it made the bottom line look pretty good. HSA contributions are up because the blue collar union agreed to the high deductible insurance, and then that comes with an HSA payment through payroll for each of the employees that's on a high deductible plan. Under revenues, once again, a large portion of the Monroe County sales tax benefits this highway per-town fund. So we budgeted just over $5 million in sales tax money. It's been trending up significantly for the past 2 or 3 years. So we're trying to build it into the budget, make it more of a realistic number.
At the bottom of that section, Patty, you'll see state aid chips.
Right.
That's the reciprocal.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
There's the chips. And then here's the other side of the $500,000 transfer that we just saw as revenue over in the Highway Part-Town Fund. So for this particular fund, we've used the sales tax money and appropriated fund balance to bring the amount to be raised by taxes to zero. And once again, that allows us to use sales tax revenue in the town-wide funds, which helps us over in general fund. So I think the last, just the special district for drainage.
Yep.
Jump over to that.
I believe so.
Down there quite a bit. Here it is.
Perfect. So consolidated special drainage district, this is what we do most of our sort of not within the roadway drainage projects, which is a lot of wet areas that need maintenance, clearing, pond maintenance, things of that nature. So this is the maintenance arm of our MS4 stormwater compliance program. So we have labor in there, again, tracking a little bit higher. Engineering, we find from time to time, there'll be projects that come up where we have to utilize some engineering to be able to get in and do the projects. We're currently, we just did the sizable projects to date this year. We're actually by Schlegel Road Elementary School. We cleared a pathway there from Schlegel Road north, probably 800 or 900 feet. They cleared an entire section that was completely wooded in, holding water to release that. We're currently over, we just did some on John Glenn, but we're behind some homes on Lothario Circle, cleaning up a situation that's been there for quite a while where there's holding water and it's very, very wet. So those types of improvement projects off the road is what's in this section. Equipment rental, from time to time, we do need specialized equipment in this section to do that. And then materials, piping, and things of that nature are always needed on this, a little bit, some more than others year to year, but in general, the cost of all these things is going up slightly, so that's what we're tracking here.
Okay.
And then you're into benefits,
Yeah,
which
benefits
goes along.
down
with-
slightly year to year.
Yep.
Do the medical insurance again.
Yep. And then revenue and fees, which we do some cammering for various things. The drainage fees for new homes come in through the building department, and then interest and earnings. And then this one is tied to the rest of the stuff with our consolidated drainage district, which we're working on different metrics on. This year, we're getting pretty far along with some of the commercial properties that are right within our areas and getting their fees in line with their property. So we're still working on that project, which relates to this fund as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that that consolidated special drainage district looks pretty benign on paper, not many line items, but there's a story here, because if you go back to actually 2022, which is not shown on here, I think the total monies were maybe $450,000 because we were at 11,000 units. And
That's right.
we last year increased that to the 15,400 units it is now, because we included all the houses in town. Where previously it had been like at 78% of them. And Pat, to your point, where that's the residential properties. Now we're working on the impervious areas of these commercial properties. Incredible project that you and Mary Harrington was really running the show on that. But
Yep.
GIS, it's something. And but that won't kick in until I think January of '25.
Yeah.
Because we want to do it. We want to measure twice, cut once on that one. Let's put it that way. And Donna's been great in assessment, so.
Yeah, the collaboration's happening now to roll it
Yeah.
out then, so it's a long lead time, but it's really coming along. I think it'll be really finite and clear for our,
Yeah, and I
our
think in the
taxpayers.
next couple of months, we'll have some board activity, workshops and resolutions on certain things. Getting way ahead of it now, but this won't come into play until the commercial properties till 25, but.
As far as people actually receiving the,
Yeah.
yeah, and the lines in here changing, correct.
And I didn't, are you, is that it? Are you done? 'Cause-
That's it.
Okay, because I don't want to jump ahead of everybody, but unless when we were going over sewer, and I said the oversimplification, the reason why the expenses are up is that you got all this bond interest, bond anticipation notes, because we're starting the construction, of the sewer plant. Where is,
We are.
knock on wood, later on tonight, I think we're moving forward with accepting the low bids on 5 contracts today for the highway. And Pat, am I right in assuming that groundbreaking could be in the fall?
Yep. I
Well,
don't know if we're gonna wait for fall.
fall's not too far away. Okay, good, late summer.
Yep.
But Paul, where in the
Yeah.
budget is the money for that?
Yeah, it's budgeted in general fund. General fund, by law, pays for highway buildings. We're planning on borrowing about 14 million
Okay,
at the end of August, just in a few weeks. So I have budgeted ban interest only for that portion. There's a portion here in the general fund, 751,825. That includes interest both for the highway building and for the Sandbar Park borrowing. Sandbar
Okay.
Park will borrow about 3.5 million, so about 75% of this 750, or about
Gotcha.
600,000 is the highway building interest for the first borrowing.
okay, and that's, now that I see it on the screen and where you're at, the lift from last year is, it looks like 961 in '23 and 1,740,000 in '24.
Correct.
That's, I hate to say the realities of,
It's a big lift.
good news, we're breaking ground on this. Bad news, it costs.
We have to pay for it.
We gotta pay for it.
Yep.
So, it's not like we didn't know that was coming. So,
Right.
How's your manpower been, Pat?
It's continuing to fluctuate. A week ago, I would have said we were up 2 or 3 guys and really, really close to where I want to be for this year. But of course, that changes.
Right.
So now we're right in there. So this year, my goal was to have 43 guys, which is up about 3 or 4 guys from historic average. Today, I sit at 41, but I did have a resignation a little while ago. One guy's going to be going on to something else. But yesterday, I got a verbal acceptance for another guy coming in. And I've got 2 or 3 good candidates that we've interviewed recently. So I'm really hoping to get up in that 41, 42 range. And that's driven really by winter operations.
Right.
Having that many guys, when we split into shifts, 18 routes in town, trying to keep it where we can plow the entire town in 4 hours. A lot of those numbers are all driven right into just that one
Right.
entity. And then the rest of the time, just maximize everything they're doing and offer as many services as possible. So it's pretty good. Really, if I look at notes we've compared with other people, their towns, other municipalities and things of that nature, we're not suffering as bad as a lot of other places as far as not having enough people. So I'm happy with it, even though we're
Yep.
just a little less than the ultimate goal. So
Right.
good
Good to hear.
overall, I would say.
I don't have anything else.
Thanks, Pat.
It's kind of a big night for you tonight, though.
Busy
right?
night. You're gonna see a lot of me. I
Yeah.
apologize in advance.
No, not at all.
No apology.
Can't wait to see it.
All right, next up, we have the Tom DeSalvo from the court.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Tom.
Good afternoon.
Okay. I'm just going down the list of justice salaries. There's about a $5,000 increase. That's based on the action of the town board, of the elected officials, I believe. Clerical assistants.
There's no chair. Oh, there's a chair.
There we go.
Christine's just joining us.
There we go. Judge Sepler just arrived here. We just started.
Oh, beautiful.
Your timing is impeccable. So we're talking about justice salaries, which are set by the town board. Clerical assistants, regarding the clerks, I believe that's basically a reflection of the white collar unions agreement. Right now, we're down one full-time clerk. Judge Sepler, as her main clerk, resigned and went to the school district, and so we're in the process of trying to hire another clerk to take that position. So at this point in time, we have about 2 full-time clerks and 2 part-time clerks. And obviously, we want to go to 3 full-time clerks as soon as possible. It's a daunting task, though, to recruit clerks and find someone who's capable of doing the job. Overtime pay, that's pretty standard. That varies in terms of whether or not we have trials at night. If we have a jury trial, obviously that goes beyond the normal business day, so that would reflect that. In terms of capital purchases, I'm really not aware of any specific things we're looking to buy this year.
Tom, I think that was the drinking
Oh,
fountain.
that was the drinking
which
fountain.
you
That's
ended
right.
up,
Okay.
You ended up
That's right.
purchasing it recently, so.
My clerks were dissatisfied with the 1974 drinking fountain that was outside, so.
So we could probably adjust.
Right, so Paul allowed us to get it this year. So that was, and I see it's been installed outside. So that's a plus. So that's really the big purchase for this year.
Stay hydrated.
That's right, stay hydrated, exactly. And you gotta keep the clerks happy. If the clerk's happy, everybody's happy.
That's right.
So, computer equipment and licensing, that's a pretty static figure. Conference expenses, it's generally the various meetings with the local magistrates association and the state magistrates association, where we have our required and additional training that the state requires us to have. That's pretty static year to year. A big change over the years was the court security and court security line. Up to, I believe, last year, or maybe the year before, all we had was the special police, which essentially did it for free. But with them leaving the scene, we've contracted to a third-party provider. And it's just an expensive service. It's just as simple as that. There's just no way around it.
I think we originally thought it was gonna be more than that, but this is pretty much what we're averaging, so
Well, it's good.
it's better than expected so far.
Right. You know, luckily, we have not had any real problems, but you never know. From time to time, they certainly could come up. You have families of victims come to court when the defendant's in court, and sometimes that has a problem. Small claims court can be explosive.
Yeah.
So, it's an important service. Office supplies, it's a pretty static cost. And copier and computer software maintenance, again, that's a pretty static cost. In terms of fines, we're way down. Part of that, and we're not in the business of collecting fines. We try to set the fine based on the violation involved, what the person's record is, and frankly, their ability to pay. Because if they can't pay the fine, there's no sense setting a high fine, because they're not gonna pay it. And right off the bat, you start out with a $93 state surcharge on moving violations and a $63 state surcharge on equipment violations. So those fines mount up pretty quickly. But in June of 2021, I think I mentioned this before, in June of 2021, the state took away our ability to scoff people who don't pay their fines. And any casual reading of the Daily Record will show lists and lists of courts across the county. The City of Rochester Adjudication Bureau today, I noticed they had almost a full page of unpaid fines and judgments. So we take a civil judgment against people who don't pay their fines. And the word is out, really, that if you don't pay your fine, there's really not going to be much of a consequence.
No.
So that definitely had an impact. And many of the, not many, but a good number of vehicle and traffic misdemeanors were bailable offenses prior to 2020. That's not the case anymore either. And those bails many times were applied to the fines. And that's not around either. So you put all those together and there's a substantial reduction in fine revenue.
I think we're about half of what we used to be years
Right,
ago.
Right. There was a time, there was a time when certainly the fines exceeded the expenses of the justice courts. And that was really the result of a plus or a minus, depending on how you look at it, is State Route 104 went through the center of town.
Right.
And the state troopers would, sit out there and stop people.
Yep.
And that's certainly, you don't see it as much as you did before, because I think well, I can't speak for the police, but you certainly don't see that as you did before. So a lot of that is just the consequences of what's going on in Albany.
Mhm.
So as a result, more of it's going to be paid by the local municipalities. So
Yeah.
that's it. I don't know if Judge Suppler has anything she wants to add.
I think you covered all the bases, so unless
Okay.
there's any questions, I'm.
Right, is there any questions of
Covered it well.
any of us?
Thank
Either of us?
Thank you.
Tom always
Thank
has a
you.
question.
No, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, Tom.
Paul, I mean, one last thing, just to tie this up, I mean, in the special districts, I'll get there sometime, the parkland, or park districts,
Park District, yeah.
the total for them is about $80,000 to $85,000.
Yeah.
And it looks as though 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 16 park districts.
16 active park districts.
Active park districts, active, in our terminology means there's money
Yeah,
flowing in and budgets, and you work with the, I don't know, whoever at these park districts, I don't know if they're homeowners
yeah.
associations.
Each one has a contact.
Yeah. But haven't we figured out that there's like about 100 plus of these park districts?
Yeah,
in
there
town?
are many, many park districts, most being inactive, right?
Yeah. And some of them found out they were park districts back when we took the ash trees down.
Right.
And I know that we're working on a project right now to try to proactively reach out to the residents in those 100 park districts to make sure that they know that land around your
Yeah.
place is park district and it's,
Yeah, explain to them how it works, yeah.
yeah. It is interesting because I know, and I'm name dropping, the Candlewood Park District,
Yeah.
that's a very
Very
active-
proactive,
Yeah,
very robust, as you would say.
very organized.
Yes.
All right? Those
Mhm.
guys, they got it going on.
It's a business, it's a corporation.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it kind of, to me, is going to be the model that as we talk with the other 80 or 90
Yeah.
park districts.
Yeah,
that
they're
if
doing
they
it
wanna
right.
get involved in the maintenance of their 1, 5, 10 acres around their neighborhood, that the Candlewood model might make sense for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
why reinvent the wheel? They're doing it right.
Yeah. All right, that's all I had on that. I think, unless I'm missing something, that concludes our second budget workshop, and we're done for an hour until the board meeting starts at 7:30. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you in an hour.